Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. And again, I can't thank you enough for joining us this morning. As always, you can reach out to me at any point in our conversation together to weigh in on what we'll be discussing, which a little bit of it will be the town hall last night with Governor DeSantis and Nikki Haley. Also a few updates on Trump, and we saw Colorado, Maine. There may be others to add to that list trying to take him off the ballot. We'll be discussing that as well. So please feel free to weigh in. And if you didn't catch that quick enough, at the bottom of the screen is the number with that little wave next to it. You can reach out there by text or by voicemail is the best way to reach me. Next week, I know we've been scant on interviews. That's the nature of the time, as you can imagine, trying to book people during the holiday week and saying, hey, you want to do it next week? Well, I've got gifts to wrap and things to cook, etc. So we're back on track. Just one I want to highlight for next week to prepare you, because I promised I would. Friday of next week, we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. A little bit about the state of the state and what Governor Hochul is proposing, but also about energy policy. So we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano next Friday, right around 7. As soon as he hops in the studio here, we're going to put him right on the seat to start talking about what's going on in Albany. Speaking of that, I do have a couple updates on New York and about the population. We've been talking about it throughout this week because they released the numbers of how many people left the state according to the census. We're at about 101,000 people left New York State. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. An update on Nancy Pelosi as well that I think you're going to find interesting. And just a few kind of hodgepodge. On Friday, we try to get through as much as we possibly can because we know we have a long weekend where you and I can't chat together. So we try to catch up on as many stories, as we possibly can. I'm about to cough there. This is interesting and troubling at the same time. Just a quick update before we take our first break. According to numerous news reports, an armed, unmanned surface vessel launched from Houthi-controlled Yemen got within a couple of miles of U.S. Navy and commercial vessels in the Red Sea before detonating on Thursday, just hours after the White House and a host of partner nations issued a final warning to the Iran-backed militia group to cease the attacks or face potential military action. So we'll see, again, where that is headed. Kind of the line in the sand was just the other day, and yet within hours, the drone attack on ships. So I wanted to give you an update on that. We're not going to just focus, obviously, on international. We have more New York State and national stories as well. We're going to get to that in just a moment. I don't want to run too late because I know we have so much to cover, and I want to kind of dive in depth on some of the issues we're facing here in New York. I think you're going to find this first piece interesting by Chris Churchill. I believe this is a Times Union, but the way it is printed out, yes, it is Times Union. We're going to tell you what he had to say about the big New Year's population drop. And I say New Year's because it's right around Christmas when the U.S. Census Bureau releases its data on our population, and I'm sure other states as well. So stay with us. Let's take our first break. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We'll be right back. It's a chilly but beautiful morning here on Market Street in Corning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. So Chris Churchill from the Times Union says another year, another big New York population drop. Now, New York's decline, we talked about the numbers, 101,000 people leaving the state, many suggesting that's kind of a vote with your feet. Well, New York's decline is the largest in the country in both total and percentage. So he says, I don't even want to, I'm just paraphrasing, of course, I don't even want to write about this, but it's a necessity. We've got to talk to Albany. How do we fix this? But I've got to say, I disagree with a lot of it. I agree with some of it. He says, but let's start by acknowledging what the decline is not about. Contrary to the claims of former Governor Andrew Cuomo, it's not about the weather. And obviously, I mean, yes, there's people that leave to go to Florida and like that, but it's not. That's not why 101,000 people left. I disagree with this. Contrary to the claims of U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik, it's not about crime. I'm not sure how you can say crime doesn't play a part. And I would say much more of a part than weather. You can't see the headlines, especially in places like the New York Post, when you look at the city and some of the things going on in like Rochester and elsewhere, and even hitting us here. We talk about it so often with bail reform and the like. Why would people, on top of high taxes, on top of a poor business climate, why would that not be a major factor in all of that? We know it's one of the reasons why businesses are deciding either not to come here or to close up shop because of shoplifting. And with bail reform, you could go to the judge and say, yeah, judge, I shoplifted. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go steal a suit at the local big box store and for my next trial date, and nothing can really be done. And I know that's kind of an extreme example, but it can be done. So why would that not play a factor in all this? But he says crime. I don't want to minimize the impact and importance of crime, but it mostly heavy. Let me start this over, because I hope this guy doesn't ever decide to run for politics, or if he has, I'm not sure. But this is something interesting. I don't want to minimize the impact and importance of crime, but it most heavily impacts the poor, who are, generally speaking, the people least able to move. Yeah, so let's not worry about crime. What a weird way of putting that. That's not what businesses are saying by shutting their doors. That's not what people on the street that don't feel safe to walk at night are saying. I feel like that's very wrong-headed and trying to downplay what should be a major focus in Albany. And I don't know anything about this, Mr. Churchill, except for his opinion writer here at the Times-Union. I don't want to give full credit there. But to me, that is really downplaying something that should be a major concern in Albany, and something that bail reform and the like should be seriously looked at. But of course, we know that Albany is looking to virtue signal or be the first to make the bad decision, or at least the second after California, that leads to the high crime rates, that ties the hands of police officers while coddling the criminals. But what is it? He said, if it's not those things. Well, as noted by E.J. McMahon of the Fiscally Conservative Empire Center for Public Policy, the answer depends on what part of New York we're talking about. Okay. In many upstate regions, but not the Albany area, where the population is increasing, the problem is a dearth of jobs and economic opportunity. Downstate, the problem is the extraordinarily high cost of living. Republicans mostly blame taxes for those costs. Democrats mostly blame housing prices. And McMahon says they're both partly right, but they don't acknowledge their own roles in contributing to that. Decades of government policy drove taxes higher, including in Republican-controlled areas of Long Island. Government policy also created the cumbersome regulatory environment that stifles economic growth upstate and housing construction downstate. McMahon, though, expects the population outflow to slow and perhaps even stop in the next census examination. Listen to this, and here's why. Despite the usual inaction from lawmakers, why would this be the case? Higher mortgage rates, he notes, are making Americans far less willing and able to move, even when they might otherwise want to. So it's not like they want to stay here. They're stuck here. And that, I guess, is a silver lining. I thought that was a good point at the end by Churchill, that they'll stay because they're stuck. I don't actually think that's the case, because we talked about the polls, and I'm going to show you a poll here in a moment that I don't trust as far as I could throw it, but there was a recent poll probably within 6 months that said people may not be moving right now, which 101,000 did, but they are making that 5-year plan. And I would ask that question. I know I've asked it before in the program. How many of you have a 5-year plan? And maybe it isn't. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 10. But it's as soon as I retire, or as soon as, the kids move out, or as soon as this, you have this set goal of that's when you're making your plans to move from the state. Now, I don't want this to be the case. I'm just telling you the numbers. I've said it numerous times. I wish we could build New York into a place where people want to come, where businesses want to come. But if we continue down this same path, which, again, according to a poll I'm about to tell you about after break, it does seem as if we're going to be headed down that same path for quite some time. And I know it gets very discouraging. How many of you worked for maybe a different politician like Lee Zeldin, hoping for change, and then it doesn't come to fruition because you see the city. I know it gets frustrating, but you can't give up. I had numerous people on this program in the past who would maybe running for governor or running for Congress or even Senate saying we can't give up on the great state of New York. I am going to unfortunately give you another kind of doom and gloom piece here about this poll from Siena when we come back, but I am running a little late, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking. Thank you again for joining us. I'm your host, Frank Acom, as I broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Feel free to weigh in on these issues facing New York, the population decline, those moving or voting with their feet. And I said that there's a discouraging poll, and I do want you to take it with a grain of salt, please. But a new Siena College poll found that a majority of New York voters are in favor of raising taxes on large, profitable corporations and the top 5% of earners. Now, the poll was commissioned by the Invest in Our New York campaign. They found that 67% of surveyed residents support the tax increases. That includes 81% of Democrats, 59% of independents, and 46% of Republicans. Now, I think many of you will be saying, well, it's already one of the worst business climates in the country. How will this help? And we've seen of those 101,000 people that left, how many were millionaires and billionaires? And we've had stories over and over again about millionaires leaving as well in droves. I know recently it was announced, and he is a millionaire, Sean Hannity from Fox News leaving New York for Florida. And you say, so what? How is this going to fix things? If those people leave, the billionaire drain, so to speak, how do we make up for that? And we've talked about this before, that the people, we're not going to spend less, unfortunately, in this state. What we're going to end up doing is you and I and those that decide to stay here will be making up that difference. And you say, so why do they not see this? Maybe the people that were polled do not see this. No, quite the contrary. Levy said the survey found, I had to reread this a couple times, that 60% of New Yorkers responded that they believe that raising taxes on the wealthiest could result in billionaire flight from the state, or that it could hurt the state more than it could help. I said, did I read that wrong? Yeah, 60% recognize that it could hurt the state more than it helps it. The researchers said that even among those who expressed those concerns, however, the majority still said they would be in favor of seeing the taxes increased. So even though it may hurt the state more, it may make even more of a drain on our finances, why not? Now, some of it, if you read between the lines, is kind of a jealousy that they should be paying more than me. Well, couldn't we all get together and say, hey, why don't we all pay less taxes? It's... like I said, that alone was worth the read for me. That even though people recognize that it could hurt the state, yeah, they're cool with it. What's really phenomenally interesting in this survey, I think, is you have to kind of wrestle with it a little bit yourself, is that even amongst people who hold that view, meaning that it could hurt the state and cause billionaires and millionaires to leave, a majority say we need to raise taxes. Now, this is why I believe the person or the group that funded this may have other interests, saying, so I hope the governor takes a serious look and includes it in her and her team's analysis moving forward. So a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hochul, don't worry. They know it's going to hurt. They know it's going to end up hurting the state. So let's get through all the sweetheart plans that you want, all the pie in the sky ideas that you want. That's what it seems more to me as a PR push to convince the governor. But at the same time, there might be something to see there, because how often we said, wait a minute, with all the problems, whether it is public safety, whether it is high taxes, whether it is business climate, whether it is the least amount of freedoms of any state, why are we still voting in essentially the same people? And I know it's not us, it's more downstate, but why are we voting in the same people over and over again and essentially expecting different results? It's polls like that just confirm that things, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope you can text me soon and say, boy, you were wrong. But I just don't see things changing anytime soon if we're pushing in spend more, make no changes. Oh, and let's make up for that deficit by really going after the people that have no reason to stay here. And when we see businesses saying that we're not even on their list of potential states to move to, or unfortunately shuttering up their businesses because of shoplifting or safety issues or high taxes or business climate in general. And then you had the piece from Churchill that we mentioned before where there's this lack of jobs in upstate, and that's one of the reasons that people are leaving. And yet you see a poll like this, it's essentially saying, hey, businesses, might want to leave. We've got a plan for you. We've got an idea that could hurt you. It could hurt the state overall, but we're still all for it. All right, a little bit of a tangent there. When we come back, changing it up, going to the national level, we're going to talk a little bit about the presidential race. As I've warned, if you will, we will probably talk about the presidential race every single day for at least this year, and perhaps going into next year as well. So keep that in mind. It might not be the whole show. It may only be a small portion. But I would be shocked if we don't mention it, at least in passing. But anyway, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Stay with us. As always, thank you for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox as we broadcast live from the Hessison studio here on Market Street in Corning. I received a comment from a viewer. What Republicans believe in increasing any taxes? Come on. LOL. Laugh out loud. I agree. I think this is in reference to the Churchill piece that said decades of government policy drove taxes higher, including in Republican-controlled areas of Long Island. So government policies, is that saying like Albany policies? So that would be saying, oh, wow, taxes increased throughout all of New York, even in Republican-controlled areas because of Albany policies? Well, I guess yes. I'm not really sure. Or if they're just referencing maybe some decisions made on Long Island, which is a very different type of, I'm not going to say different type of Republican, but a different type of political atmosphere than it is in upstate. All right, let me see if I can try to read this one. I'm going to read this off the cuff, but I got to be careful. Mind-blowing. I thought we were smarter than this. Raising taxes with an ever-shrinking base is ludicrous and outrageous thinking. Perhaps they aren't paying anything now. You know, if they are in the right zip code. Yeah, I'm not sure. To me, it just seems like that is a poll that may have been funded in a way to push Governor Hochul into some decisions that, because again, Governor Hochul seems very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very open to ideas that she thinks is going to help her political campaign, but is also very, very much virtue signaling or showing that, look, we're the most perhaps liberal or the most quote unquote caring. But when I say caring, bail reform isn't caring for the everyday citizen. That's what makes it all so frustrating to all of us, you and myself and the people that we have on this program that have talked about it. Makes it all the more frustrating, and that's why it's called virtue signaling. But let's get away from that. But you can weigh in at any time. I would hope that we are overall, and I'm sure that maybe in downstate because it is so Democrat controlled, maybe that poll would be accurate. I wonder how many upstate residents were actually polled in that, because I don't believe they would have the same mindset. Here's one, and this was not my goal, just so you know. I have to say this is what makes me lose faith in logic. I will still vote, but not feeling optimistic, I must say, not in the least. Well, let me say that is not my goal here on the program, but I'm just presenting to you well, I don't know if you call it facts because it is still a poll, but I'm just presenting you the information that comes across my desk. But it is frustrating, but we can't give up. That's why at the beginning of this program, when we first went on the air, I said it's about building community. It's about building the state up, the country up, but we've got to start here at home. And I think we're doing our piece, and that's the best that we can do. As long as we keep fighting and we leave it all on the playing field, we can rest easy at night. All right, speaking of somebody probably resting easy financially anyway, Nancy Pelosi, her 2023 trading gains, stock trading, those type of things, top 65%. Nancy Pelosi's investment portfolio is once again among the top performers on Capitol Hill, and lately she has gotten a major boost from a controversial use of stock options, according to government disclosures. She doesn't even hide from it. That's what's really interesting about some politicians. I won't use party affiliation necessarily because there are some Republicans that obviously gained using trading as well. But with Pelosi, they literally came out with an act called the Pelosi Act, which was to stop trading because it really made a lot of people believe that there was insider trading. And by the way, this controversial system that she's using of stock options, many have said is rife for insider trading. But the 83-year-old former House Speaker, who remains a Democrat Congresswoman representing San Francisco, racked up a 65% return on her stock portfolio in 2023. You don't have to be specific. Did your stock portfolio gain 65% this year? It actually more than doubled the S&P 500's 24% gain. Pelosi wasn't alone. I will be in, as I said, we try to bring you all the information. Representative Mark Green, a Republican from Tennessee, he logged a return of more than $122,000, or 122%. Excuse me. I'm sorry, thinking about all the money we're spending in New York, it got me razzled. More than 122%. Representative Josh Gottheimer, Democrat from New Jersey, he was up more than 25%. They go on. They explain why, I believe it was Green, ironic, right, made so much money, and it was about an investment that he had held on to since 2021, and the company actually jumped 239% last year. But options, well, let me take a step back. This is from the New York Post. Unlike buying individual stocks, options allow for more leverage, which means more exposure to a stock and a greater reward if a bet is right. Options also could be an indicator an investor has access to inside information, according to ethics watchdogs. And I quote Jeff Hauser, of the founder and director of the Revolving Door Project, saying, "It's a sign of quasi-insider trading that's corrupt and should be banned. It's either an addiction to risk or a sign of corruption." Whew. Options trading on Capitol Hill soared to a record of more than $160 million last year, up from $30 million in 2022. That's even as the total number of congressional trades slumped to 11,000 last year from 14,000 a year before. Hauser said there are teams of people at sophisticated hedge funds that exist to find minor arbitrage opportunities to make a profit. It's preposterous to think they are finding profit where Bridgewater or Renaissance Capital is missing it. It's either because they know too much or because they can't stop thinking about money. So take that for whatever it is worth. I thought it was interesting. I know there's been a lot of talks in the past. I believe actually Congressman Langworthy was a part of a bill trying to ban this kind of trading as well. How about this? Another comment from a viewer. A caring Governor Hochul wouldn't follow Cuomo's lead and tell conservative people to just leave New York State. I don't have amnesia. Well, I don't know if, yes, I don't think she would come out and say that as Governor Cuomo did. Governor Cuomo at the time saying if you were, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and there's always something else that I forget, that he said, well, you're not welcome here. The conservatives essentially aren't welcome in New York, if you recall at the time. We've got a lot more to get to. Let's take another short break. Man, we're moving fast this morning. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thank you again for joining us. I'm your host, Frank Acom. So did you watch, I'd love to hear from you. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Did you watch the CNN town hall? I guess I got confused. There's a town hall and there's the debate coming up on the 10th. So the 10th is when Trump will be holding a rally, Trump will be holding a town hall on Fox News at that same exact time. I was confusing the two. But DeSantis and Haley had, I guess, back-to-back town halls. The candidates set expectations. This is takeaways from CNN. Polls show Trump with a clear lead in Iowa, but DeSantis and Haley both insisted they will compete to win the state. DeSantis saying, don't let the media or the pundits make the decision. Vote for who you think will be the best president of the United States. And then he bragged about his appearances in all 99 of Iowa's counties. I guess Haley even made a joke, just tease him, but she quipped while she was campaigning in New Hampshire the other day saying, you know how to do this. You know Iowa starts it, and you know that you correct it, meaning that Iowa makes a mistake, and then New Hampshire is the one that comes back and fixes it. Oof. I guess she had to downplay that a little bit. But she said, you're going to see me fight until the very end, on the very last day in Iowa. And I'm not playing in one state. I'm fighting in every state because I think everybody's worth fighting for. Now, DeSantis and Haley did take on Trump without directly, I guess, addressing the trials. But Nikki Haley saying chaos follows him, and we can't have a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos. We won't survive it. That's kind of one of the talking points that's used very often in the media, that we don't want this chaos. We don't want. But the ironic thing is, it's the media that is constantly focusing on, and we saw it during the former president's presidency, with how many scandals that proved not to be scandals, or how many media alerts did we see that proved to be nothing. I remember the first time it hit me where I realized how bad it was going to be. I think, and probably I realized before, but was when they made a big deal about Melania Trump wearing high heels onto Air Force One before they were visiting a disaster zone. But of course, when she got off the plane, because you can actually switch shoes in that Air Force One, it is big enough that she was wearing actual work boots. But anyway, so I'm not really sure about that talking point. But we have a country to save. And that means no more drama, no more taking things personally. Do you think, and this isn't directly an attack on Haley or anyone, do you think if Haley gets in there, if DeSantis gets in there, if Chris Christie gets in there, if anybody but Trump gets in there, that the drama goes away? What I mean, to her point is, we don't want that drama anymore. Do you think, I'll ask you, you can reach out at any time, do you think if a Republican, I should have been clear with that, if a Republican wins the presidency, and even take a step back, if it were a different Republican than Trump wins the primary, do you think the drama's done? Or do you think the media has found their playbook and that everything will be a scandal, everything? And they've had that for a while, but it's been hyped up. It's been sped up in recent years. So if Nikki Haley, to her point, and I'm asking you the question, I'm not trying to put any kind of bias in here. I'm asking you the question. If Nikki Haley were to get the nomination instead of Trump and were to become president of the United States, do you think the drama would be over? Do you think the media would treat her like they've treated Biden, with kid gloves? I think it's a fair question to ask, just in reference to her talking point. They're saying that the DeSantis has evolved. He kind of got more folksy, if you will, more down to earth, saying things like appreciate you and willy-nilly. I guess that makes you folksy. Well, then label me folksy. And the Florida governor argued that while Trump was running on issues important only to him and Haley was running for her donors, DeSantis was running for you, the average voter. Whose playbook did he maybe take that out of? Isn't that kind of interesting? Now, he says, again, Trump was running on issues important only to him and Haley was running for her donors, which with Haley, I'm not trying to attack Haley, but we know that she received a lot of donations because many people, and there's a piece actually here saying that she is, to many anti-Trump Republicans, the only hope, the last hope. But when he says he's running for you, the average voter, very reminiscent of the Forgotten Men and Women speech that Trump would frequently give. They discussed guns. DeSantis saying, we've done everything like school resource officers, meaning in Florida, help with hardening, but also help identify students that are exhibiting really problematic behavior. We're getting more information about what happened in Perry and that shooting yesterday in Iowa. But it seems like the student had some serious problems. DeSantis said later on, when being further questioned, you shouldn't have to be on a mandatory waiting period to get a firearm. Instant checks will do the job. And Nikki Haley focused on the mental health issue, saying we've got to deal with the cancer that is mental health. Quickly, Haley revisited her Civil War answer. She said, I should have said slavery right off the bat, but if you grew up in South Carolina, literally in second and third grade, you learn about slavery. I was thinking past slavery and thinking about the lessons that we would learn going forward. I should have done that. I shouldn't have done that, she said. And DeSantis uses a softer tone on abortion. It wasn't completely soft, but it probably could be used against him further on down the line. Okay, how we doing? Okay, we got just a moment. DeSantis accused Trump of not being pro-life, claims ex-president flip-flopped on the issue. I think for pro-life voters in Iowa, Donald Trump is taking positions that are way different than what he professed to believe when he ran for president in 2016. So he was asked, do you think Donald Trump is not pro-life? He said, of course not. I mean, when you're saying that pro-life protections are a terrible thing, by definition, you are not pro-life. When you say that you want to have a federal law at 18 weeks or 20 weeks that would override a state like Iowa that has enacted pro-life protections, that would mean more abortions, not less. So we did see some attacks on the former president as I think is it 9 days to Iowa? 9 or 10 days to Iowa. Yes, can you believe it? So you can imagine what we'll be talking about for the next few weeks. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, get away to a couple issues on Trump, because, of course, Trump did not have a town hall there. I wonder if CNN will give him a town hall again. Remember when I think heads even rolled over at CNN when they gave him a town hall, and right on the front page of CNN the next day was people like Anderson Cooper and others that work for CNN saying, we should have never done this. We should have never given him the platform. And if you recall, I went on kind of a tangent back then, too, saying that that's them signaling that they will not have to give the former president time on the air or kind of that fairness and give him the outlets that maybe a Biden will get because they don't have to give him, quote, unquote, the platform. But let's take that break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, frankly speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Stay with us. Another beautiful look at Marcus Street. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Okay, so some clarification here. I received another few comments here from viewers, and thank you as always. So this viewer says, sorry, Frank, not texting for a fight. Nothing personal. I appreciate you. No, I appreciate you because this person clarified. I misunderstood. And the comment was, a caring Governor Hochul wouldn't follow Cuomo's lead and tell conservative people to just leave New York State. I don't have amnesia. And I had actually, in full disclosure, forgot this exact quote, and thank you so much for sending it. This is what happens when I try to read quickly. I should have waited for break or whatever I read. I should have taken a second. But this is the exact quote. We're here to say the era of Trump and Zeldin and Molinaro. Just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? This is a quote from Governor Hochul. You are not New Yorkers. I had forgotten, in full disclosure, that she had indeed taken the lead of what Cuomo had said. So if you recall what I had said when I read the first thing was to reiterate what Cuomo had said. I missed the point about what Hochul actually said, and I forgot about that quote. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you for sending it in. Also, another great point. Leftist Democrats will not be any more friendly to Haley. And this was to my question, because Nikki Haley suggested that there's enough drama, that we don't need the former president. We have enough drama. Would there be drama if Nikki Haley gets in there, or Governor DeSantis gets in there, if any Republican gets in there, will there still be drama, or is that to say that the media will lay up? I think most of us know what our opinion is. Leftist Democrats will not be any more friendly to Hallie. I have seen congressional hearings, and AOC and fellow Democrats are despicable acting, and they sound like broken records. MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. Republicans will forever be known as MAGA. And that's a great point. And before that, it was other things. I mean, I always point back, and you've heard me say it on the program before if you've watched for any long time. I remember when John McCain thought he was going to be loved by the media because he had always been the maverick. He was always willing to give that interview bad-mouthing, essentially Republicans, and that always got him a lot of attention because the media loves, hence Chris Christie and hence Liz Cheney, they love Republicans that will bash other Republicans because it kind of fits their narrative and plays into their narrative, right? So back then when McCain got the nomination, again, thinking that the media was going to be fair to him, I don't think it was within days. I think it was within hours of them suggesting that he had cheated on his wife and just some horrible things. And I think maybe I don't know. I was going to say maybe the veil unlifted, but later on he kind of went down a similar path. And I would say the same for Mitt Romney. And he hadn't learned his lesson either because he thought maybe it'd be fair, and if he treated Obama easy with kid gloves that they wouldn't go after him. And then what, they said he tied a dog to his roof, he was a bully in school or something, binders full of women, the list goes on and on. Yeah, where does he go to release those op-eds against Trump? He goes to those same locations that hated him at the time, and I would point to Liz Cheney very often being interviewed and giving exclusives to her book on channels that treated her father despicably. So, yes, I appreciate that comment. Keep them coming in. Let's take another short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I want to show you real quickly how full of themselves the media are. Because the media put together, Laura Bellin from CNN, remember that, from CNN. Her opinion, the 4 factors that could influence who pulls ahead in Iowa. Do you know what the first 2 factors are? Number 1, the CNN town hall. Number 2, the CNN debate. That gives you an idea of what we're dealing with. Okay. I've got one quick update that we're going to get to on states that are trying to take Trump off the ballot. Wait till you hear this misleading headline again to show you what we're dealing with the media. I wanted to, before we go to break, our last break, I promise, that we'll get as much in when we come back from that break as possible. But there's a really good piece by Douglas Murray at the New York Post called "The Left's Hypocrisy Over Harvard Laid Bare." And it goes through such things as what must you do to fail at Harvard. It used to be pretty clear. You had to be caught cheating or doing something so outrageous that it'd get you kicked off a campus. Not anymore. Today, Harvard is an institution that thinks anti-Semitism is okay and believes that plagiarism is fine. Not long ago, a student would have been kicked out for either of those sins. Today, the president has been caught out on both, and the board of university stuck by her for that long. It's a great piece if you get a chance. But let me take that break, and then we're going to tell you about Trump. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. All right, we are back. I hated to wait till the very end to bring this up, but you are watching Frankly Speaking, by the way. I'm your host, Frank Aiken, broadcasting live from the Heselson studio. So listen to this headline from CNN. Illinois and Massachusetts voters seek to take Trump off the 2024 ballot. And you said, well, boy, this is up to the voters, huh? This is interesting. It's not just some activist group. Groups of voters from Illinois and Massachusetts on Thursday filed motions to remove Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot. Okay. Again, well, what does that mean, a group of voters? Like, what are we talking about here? Is this like almost like essentially a recall election where it's a certain percentage of registered voters? What are we dealing with? In Illinois, the challenge filed in conjunction with the liberal advocacy group, Free Speech for People, asks the Illinois Board of Elections to hold a hearing on the matter and bar Trump and here's another very important point, from appearing on both the primary and general election. No longer happy with just a general election, just like we had recently in Pennsylvania, where you had a congressional race where someone is trying to discredit the candidate, the Republican candidate, or not disqualify, because they had some connection to Trump. So we see, again, I know, we talk about it many times, the slippery slope, but taking him off the primary and general election. But think of how misleading this is. Making it sound like the voters, like the people have risen up. And it must be both Republicans, Democrats, and even independents maybe. It's got to be, right? Oh, yeah, by the way, it's being pushed forward by a liberal advocacy group. The party affiliation of the voters, if any, was not listed. Wonder what party they could have been. If only we had any idea. The same advocacy group, again, the liberal advocacy group, Free Speech for People, filed a challenge to Trump's eligibility to appear on Massachusetts ballot, both the primary and general. Now, here's what the quote says. The challengers include former Boston Mayor Kim Janey, a Democrat, as well as, and I quote, a mix of Republican, Independent, and Democrat voters. What kind of mix are we talking about? Just out of curiosity. Illinois and Massachusetts voters seek to take Trump off the ballot. What a misleading, and trying to downplay that this is advocacy groups, trying to downplay that it's activists. I mean, it is amazing that the Democrat Party is going to run as the savior of democracy, while this kind of undemocratic, this kind of attack on democracy is what is being encouraged by that same party. They're protecting you from yourselves, folks, and protecting you from who you may have the audacity in their mind to vote for. We are out of time. Oh, boy. Did you see they're going to make a movie about Hunter Biden? And it's being financed and being, it's a documentary, being created by that Kevin Morris, which has been called Hunter Biden's, quote, sugar brother, who's paying for all those loans and things like that. The Untitled Morris Project would show a more gentle Hunter painting, selling his art, raising his son, and navigating everyday life as a sober adult with ongoing criminal investigations and in the crosshairs of former President Donald Trump and his supporters. Anyway, I don't know why we're ending on that note. Have a great weekend, everyone. I hope that you will join us Monday morning starting at 7. By the way, I had mentioned at the beginning of the program, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will be our guest next Friday. We're going to have guests in between there, but I know there's been a lot of talk of when that was going to happen and when he was going to return. It's just been on me. It had nothing to do with him. It's been my schedule. So he will be back on the program on Friday. So there's your update. Join us at 7 a.m. on Monday for Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a fun, safe weekend. I look forward to talking with you on Monday.